Hey everyone, producer Josh here. I just wanted to drop a quick note at the top of this episode. We're going to be switching from a bi-weekly to a weekly release schedule. And part of that, in addition to our author interviews, which we're still going to be doing twice a month, is we're going to be recapping the physical book clubs that we have in store every other week. And so for this first episode, the sci-fi and fantasy folks are going to be talking about Annihilation by Jeff Vander Meer. Please enjoy.
Welcome to the Village Well podcast, brought to you by Village Well Books and Coffee in downtown Culver City.
Welcome back to the Village Well podcast. My name is Tom. I am a bookseller and event host here at Village Well. I also run the Sci Fi Fantasy Book Club. And today I'm joined by two book club regulars, and we're going to talk about Annihilation by Jeff Vander Meer, which is the book that we read in our most recent meeting, which was about a week ago. Do y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Laura, book club regular.
Yeah, I am Alex, also book club regular.
Cool. So the book takes place in like a kind of unnamed coastal area where this kind of mysterious Area X has kind of spawned all these weird anomalies, and the main character, who is unnamed and remains unnamed, as do the other four main characters. The main character is part of an expedition that has been sent into this Area X by a kind of mysterious company, and there have been many more expeditions into Area X, and so they've all come back with kind of mixed results. Some of them, nobody has returned. Some of them, somebody has returned, but they're like not quite the same. It's the story of four women who are all kind of scientists in respective fields, and they kind of go in to Area X, and then things happen. And Alex, you had some media that kind of reminded you or kind of gave similar feelings to this novel, correct?
There are kind of 5 other pieces of media that I compare it to, or it reminded me of at certain points. And those 5 are Arrival, the movie based on a story, like another sci-fi short story, The Last of Us, both the video game and the HBO series. Our Wives Under the Sea, which is a novel of a similar length, actually, that I can't remember the author, but it's like, again, very like sci-fi nature, also kind of mystery, also you kind of don't fully know what's going on. And then Severance and Scavenger's Reign were the other 2 TV shows that like it reminded me of at certain points. So If anybody knows any of those things, you might get a vibe. With that in mind, did you have any other pieces of media that this book reminded you of?
Yeah, I mean, I second the Scavenger's Reign comment. As I was reading this book, I was legitimately imagining that show going on in my brain. But also another book that we read in book club previously, I feel like it was giving The Employees. Big time. Similar sort of, except, that one takes place in space, of course. But the similar sort of unnamed, sort of dehumanized characters who are interacting with things that have effects that they don't really understand.
Yeah, they're outside the realm of human understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also think the amount of information we're given as readers, even like with The Employees, I think with The Employees it was a lot less, because The Employees was, I'm going to say this word wrong, and it wasn't an epistolary novel necessarily, but it was written as reports.
Yeah.
And so it was, again, from the perspective of the employees on this ship. They obviously knew the context, but as the readers, we weren't clued into the context. And another comparison, actually, interestingly, that reminds me of is that this book is actually, it's written as a journal. And kind of like, I guess style-wise, it's not like written, like there's not like entry 1, entry 2, but it's as if we're reading someone's journal. And journals are actually a really big part of the book too. And we get to see, many times the main character and the narrator is saying, maybe you're reading, like, is referring to this as a journal, which is really cool. But that makes a lot of sense and also reminds me of the employees.
I feel like that whole thing, the journal thing, and, similarly with the employees reading the reports, it has a similar sort of, it gives the spookiness, the creepiness of the book, kind of feels like you're looking over someone's shoulder.
Yeah, it lets your mind kind of fill in those gaps for the information that isn't delivered to you. And I think that is... that really does something to you. Yeah, the experience of reading this book is like, that's why I kind of hesitated to say enjoyed, because this book was really compelling, but a lot of the times it felt uncomfortable to read, like it was hitting a little bit too close to home. And I'm sure that is the point. I think media that is supposed to make you feel not fuzzy feelings and like really asks a lot of you is really cool. These novels and media that we're talking about almost delves into like a horror side a little bit. There's a little bit of that cosmic horror where it's like the uncertainty that you have to deal with, the limits of human understanding.
Also some body horror too. I
Yeah,
think.
Absolutely. Yeah, and fungal horror like The Last of Us. Yeah.
And that's why it really reminded me of Our Wives Under the Sea, because there's some body horror, but also like there's an expedition and, people come back, but maybe not the same. Really that genre of kind of like mystery horror, but not scary. I'm not a huge horror fan when it comes to movies, but I actually think I've been reading more horror books and I really like them. Yeah.
This kind of horror is having a bit of a moment right now. I think, something in the intro that Karen Joy Fowler wrote, she kind of asks readers to focus on two kind of big themes from the book, which is humans' relationship with nature, and then also this idea of uncertainty, which we kind of already talked about. But a lot of the media, especially Scavenger's Reign, kind of it asks us to look at our relationship with nature in a different way, and really, I think, paints a bleak picture of how humans have interacted with nature for many, many years. Like, how did we find it in this book, like relationship with nature?
Yeah, well, I think that was something we talked about in the book club. Was I think some people saw kind of the pessimism and the kind of doomerism and pessimism of a book like this, talking about kind of like climate crisis, but are making comparisons to the climate crisis or, humans' interaction with nature. But almost, so there was like kind of like a pessimism or doomerism or inevitability of kind of nature taking over. But I think the other thing we talked about, I'm curious also if you like thought this too, but there was another side of it which was much more positive of like, it's like nature fighting back and like, taking back not just our bodies, but like growing out into like beyond Area X. There's references of things maybe, what's happening beyond. And that there was, if not an optimistic view, a like more neutral, like this is just how things, like nature will survive. Like nature is more resilient than we are. I don't know, curious what you
I think there's also like the element of merging, I guess, with nature. We see all these people, all these characters are transforming in one way or another as a result of their interactions with this world, and we see these implications also of people from past expeditions who may have turned into something that the characters are now seeing in their environment.
Yeah. I think that was something that was a theme that was brought up that I didn't expect, this idea of like individuality being kind of challenged through the kind of like the way that the nature kind of absorbed people into it, like absorbed the people that went into Area X into it. And I think that's like, I mean, individuality is, it's kind of an American Western thing where it really starts to be challenged. It's kind of a capitalist thing. But, this idea that you're disconnected from the land, that you want to stay that way, that you want to control and understand and document every bit of it. I think that is really, like, those philosophies are really challenged by the kind of, the strangeness of this book. Yeah.
Since we're talking about tying this book to other pieces of media, another book we read previously for book club, Pure Nessie.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about the sort of difference in how the two characters in that book approached their environment.
Yeah.
And I feel like the very similar sort of, binary of thinking approached in this book. Are we in cooperation, with the environment, with nature, or are we analyzing and conquering?
Even with the villain in this book that kind of pops up, like, the main character is still kind of a jerk, and still is controlling, and it's just like wants her reality to be in control. Yeah. The second theme, of course, is something we've already touched on a bit, but this idea of being comfortable and embracing uncertainty. And it's something that the book really asks of you. It asks a lot, I think, for you to just kind of roll with it, which is it's funny. It's been a theme in some of our books, like in some of our discussions, that there's world building that really asks a lot of the reader. And I think as a group, we've kind of gotten like better at just being like, yeah, let's just roll with it. Like, this is weird. This doesn't really make any sense, and we don't have to understand that, which I think is cool. I think you kind of need that if you want to read sci-fi. So how else did that kind of, like, what scenes or what parts of this book evoked that sense of like uncertainty that made you kind of uncomfortable to read it?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like moments I felt uncomfortable or I think more than uncomfortability for me, I think it manifested as like, I want to know more.
Yeah, intrigue.
Yeah, totally.
That's a better word, actually.
I think particularly there's something kind of about the way language is used in this area X, and I found myself really curious about that, and really curious about that world building, and if there was going to be more. And I studied linguistics in undergrad, so I was obviously like, oh my gosh, like this writing system, like what does this mean?
For context, the main character is the biologist. I guess I was trying to think of the four different disciplines, but do you remember what those were?
There's a biologist, there's an anthropologist,
a psychologist,
and a surveyor. And then they were going to have a linguist, but she chickened out at the last minute.
Which really struck a chord with you.
It really did.
So did anybody else's comments, like during our discussion, like stand out to you or bring up something that you like wouldn't have even thought of?
Yes, something comes to mind immediately. I mean, every time I come to book club, I always have my mind blown at some point by something that someone else says. And I think something that someone said at this book club was about the theme of inversion in this book, how things are mirrored, and it plays around with opposites, as in with the lighthouse and the tower / tunnel / whatever that turned out to be, with the duplicates, and just you see that again and again of things being inverted. And once this person said that, I started seeing that everywhere in the book.
Shout out Joseph for bringing that inversion into the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Our producer has given me the signal that we are now allowed to talk about spoilers. So if you haven't read or watched the movie and you don't want spoilers, this is your last warning. We're going to talk about spoilers in 3, 2, 1, spoilers.
The spoiler I thought of, so there's like a love story kind of at the center of this book, or there's a relationship, maybe, I don't know if a full love story, but it's because the main character, the biologist, she comes in to Area X because her husband had been on a previous expedition. And he came back and he was different, and then he died, as did all of the other people who had been on the previous expedition. So, and we learned this actually later in the book, like maybe like a quarter of the way through, midway through. But the main character and the biologist, I think, describes herself as really kind of cold and not as loving or nurturing as a wife, which I thought was an interesting like trope to go on. But anyway, but at the end, she, is going through all these transformations. She finds her husband's journal that she's reading from a previous expedition, and he's talking about how much he loves her, and all of his journal entries are addressed to her.
Yeah.
And at the end, she makes a choice. It seems like she could go in deeper to the world, but she decides to go find him. And that's how we end the book, is her saying, I'm deciding to go and look for my husband. Whoever finds this journal, like, that's what happened to me. Like, I went sailing off to find him. And again, it was really interesting to see this character's arc of like kind of being a bit resentful and grief-stricken about her husband.
Yeah.
And then deciding like to go and find him.
And not really even knowing if he's alive, right?
Yeah.
Because of the whole doppelganger situation. Yeah. But she was like, I'm going to take a chance. Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful. And not choosing to like, continue to study it and control it, I guess, right? To like, in a sense, like to learn and study and document is to control. So she chooses not to do that. And maybe that's some of the spore's influence on her, This is the thing that I didn't bring up, but she like early on in the novel, she breathes in like some kind of spore from a creature, and it like changes her brain chemistry in some way. And she's able to resist the psychologist who's actually hypnotizing them, and to like keep them in line. She's able to resist that and starts, kind of becoming more suspicious of all her teammates, if you will.
That actually brings up something that I feel very passionate about. I don't think those spores had as much to do with her resistance as she thinks. I think I brought this up in the book club also.
Yep.
Because I had talked with another book club member about it right before we walked in.
Yeah.
But right? Because when her husband comes home the first time, right, and they are intimate, she is interacting with the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
Area X, a part of it.
Exactly, yeah. So she was, I don't know, compromised, you might say, exposed, like before even stepping foot in Area
Infected.
X. Infected.
Yeah.
Which is why she thinks of the tower as a tower.
Whoa.
Already.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they went in on the bottom.
Before they even go in.
And they went up. Holy crap. I know.
Whoa.
Oh.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
You're saying that
some part of her remembers
that
entering from the bottom
tower?
of the tower. So she remembers going up. She thinks of it as a tower, whereas everyone else, the first time they saw it.
Yeah, it's like it's a tunnel.
It was
Yeah. I think we're on the same page too about thinking that the entrance to Area X was at the bottom or top of the tower / tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think some people weren't buying it when I said that in the group club, but I think
fully
we're
agree.
on the same.
I fully agree. Because that's why the doppelgangers were going into the tower.
Yeah.
Right?
Because they left
To leave.
to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So before we wrap up, do y'all have any closing thoughts about the book? What from it do you think will stay with you?
This is small and kind of funny, and I'm choosing to kind of join the offshoot book club that is reading the sequels.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. But there was a description that I can't get out of my head, because there's a couple times in this book the main character describes the smell of rotting honey, and I double checked myself on this. But I'm pretty sure honey doesn't rot. Like, honey is actually a like antimicrobial substance that like people use to preserve things. So it's actually impossible for honey to rot. And it was mentioned a couple times, and I'm thinking like, why is this this thing is impossible? Is this just like, is there something more to this impossible biological thing that's being referenced, or is it just he's trying to describe a sweet and also moldy smell? I don't know. That's just, it's random, but that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that I get to learn more about this phrase that is potentially impossible.
It's a very memorable book. But I think what is gonna stick with me is, maybe I'll forget the plot, the characters, but I think just like the feeling of dread from reading it was, I don't know, there were times where I was, glued to the page because I was just dreading what would happen next. I think that feeling is going to stick with me for a long time.
Yeah. In a similar way, it was a feeling that I had during book club when, I don't remember who, but somebody brought up this idea of Annihilation, the title, as a neutral word, as a kind of a part of nature, a part of the cycle of life. And the fact that like we're afraid of it as humans because we want to survive. It really like challenges the way I think we think about like death, and as death as something that is a natural process, because we are scared of that word. And that, I think that feeling that I had, like when she brought that up, I will remember that for sure. So for our next meeting on the 25th of March, it's always the fourth Tuesday of the month, we're going to be talking about The Tainted Cup, which is a biopunk mystery set in like an empire of kind of augmented beings that fight these big sea leviathans. But it's like a Sherlock type mystery with this duo that I've already started getting to love. So that should be a lot of fun. Thank you for being here on such short notice and trying out this new thing with us. I had a lot of fun chatting with you. So yeah, thanks for coming, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information from us, check out the show notes or send us an email at podcast@villagewell.com. You can always order the books mentioned through our website. This episode of the Village Well podcast is brought to you by Village Well Books and Coffee. It was produced and edited by Josh Stretton Carlson, and our theme music is from Noah Vickland. See you next week, and keep reading.